Good evening. The news gang is here. On goal, red card, and all the other stories. Macdonald Mariga booked for foul play. Who's jogging on the touchline? And is the referee going for VAR? Why nominations are now more peaceful than church? You can't make that stuff up. Also on the show tonight, just what did Dede Nyoro do? And wiping off the truth about Prezo. Did someone really hack Kalonzo Party's social media accounts? We'll have the memo, the kicker, the punchline, the take, and the angle. Ladies and gentlemen, Macdonald Mariga goes to the IEBC. Big day. He's supposed to present his papers and basically get the clearance that the play can begin.
But there's one little thing.
What happens, Francis?
Because Mariga is a footballer, the ref...
Yeah.
Because what he thought was a goal was contested. How was it contested? Because there was a claim of an offside being his registration details as a voter. And that's why actually he was kept waiting for some other candidates to be sorted out before Beatrice Muli, the returning officer, in this case the referee in the Kibra by-election, could deal with him. And there were questions about his registration details. And I think let's begin with Beatrice Muli announcing the invalidation of Mariga's candidature.
Great.
Mariga's nomination. And I have written the reason because details of these aspirants were not found in the registers, and that is in the case. As I've said, we have a window period where you can also raise your grievances. Yeah.
Very well. And on 26th of August 2019, that is last month, about 2 weeks ago, thereabout, Mariga went to Karioko Social Hall polling station in Starehe constituency to register as a voter. And on the very same day...
And this will be the first time, one would imagine, ever.
This is the very first time he was registering as a voter or actually participating in an electoral process in this country. And the very same day in the afternoon, he went to the Register of Political Parties to be formally enlisted as a member of the Jubilee Party. So let's say this.
That's 2 weeks ago, right?
That's 2 weeks ago. So Mariga's journey to the Kibra parliamentary race began between, let's say, 25th of August and up to about 29th of August. But now, there are some legal questions that are emerging. Number one, an acknowledgement slip. Is it a confirmation of registration as a voter? Listening to IEBC officials, they say an acknowledgement slip is an indicator of the first step in a process of registration.
That you have applied
as a
for
voter.
registration.
You've actually applied. And that application may fail. Why? Because the primary document you're using for registration as a voter is the national identity card. So the registration officials must go back and verify whether the national identity card that you've presented for registration as a voter is actually valid, whether it is authentic. So in the event they find that it is not authentic, then that means even your application for registration as a voter is invalid. So you cannot say, in my opinion, that application for registration as a voter is registration itself.
Joe, I think no offense to Mariga as a footballer, because that's who we've known him as. He's played internationally for teams like Parma, for Inter Milan, and also for the national team. But when he registers as a voter, he had never participated in this democratic process, which is kupiga kura. You know, when we hear that IEBC ina sajili watu kupiga kura before elections, a lot of us go to register as a voter. Maybe you might not even go and vote, but you decide, let me just go and get my voter's card so that I can exercise my democratic right of picking someone who will represent me. But if Mariga did not ever see the need to go register as a voter, but now, no, that doesn't matter. I don't think it matters at this point, because he's going to register as a voter 2 weeks before the date of submitting his papers to IEBC, so that he can go to Kibra and have people vote for him when he's never really seen the need for this democratic process. Yvonne, before you speak. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, how did Jubilee let him go all the way there. Someone dropped the ball somewhere. The fact that they did not check properly, they did not verify, they did not confirm that this guy would go before an IEBC returning officer and get his nomination his certificate. Who dropped the ball? What happened? I know there are all these differences in between the two camps in Jubilee, but I ask myself, this is the party that is ruling. How would you let this happen?
I thought you would actually ask whether he's a Jubilee candidate, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But Yvonne, it looks to me that actually the stakes are quite high because, I mean, if indeed it turns out that whatever he did on that day was invalid, he was actually not on the register because there's an appeals process going on, that actually he can't stand because the dates are passed, isn't it?
Indeed. And it's the issue of dates again that comes up in this issue. Remember, Jamila, you were saying he'd never registered as a voter. But think of it this way. These are some of the timelines. It looks like it is the qualification to vie versus the qualification to vote. So the Speaker of Parliament declared the seat vacant on August the 14th. It was then gazetted by IEBC 2 days later on August the 16th. 2 weeks later is when Mariga makes the decision to run and therefore register as a voter and also register to be a member of the party. So, you know, people are asking the question about what the law says, and this is where you have the Constitution versus the Elections Act. And the Elections Act, you know, of course, talks about a complete stoppage of registration of voters in the area in which the by-election is happening, which is why Mariga probably went to Starehe constituency because he would be barred from actually registering as a voter in Kibra. But you know, the Constitution talks about continuous voter registration. So he was able to do this in another constituency. So that means if let's say they agree, you know, that he's duly registered, he will be able to, he qualifies to vie for the seat, but he won't qualify to vote for himself in Kibra.
Absolutely.
Because the voter register for Kibra constituency is closed.
Yeah,
it was closed the minute the Speaker declared the seat vacant on the 14th of August. But so it also talks about the intention. So by the time the late Kennecoth passed, and then there was the funeral, and then there was the Speaker declaring it. So there's a lot of delayed reaction, you know. So for 2 weeks later, he thinks, you know, I think I want to run. And I think I want to run on Jubilee Party.
But Kai, this is going to be interesting. I mean, I'm just thinking like those opponents who might be there, and they'll be saying like, he wants us to vote for him, but he can't even vote for himself. Like, that is likely to be interesting fodder for his opponents, that he is not even one of us, he's not registered here.
I think it comes out as really, really untidy for Mariga, that this is how he wants to enter politics. It's looking very chaotic, very disorganized on his part. I know in football there are people called agents, and by now I think he knows there's a big difference between political agents and football agents. And Mariga is a footballer who we respect a lot. He has done a lot of good things for this country. I was in the Nyao Stadium one time when he pulled, I think, about 25 to 30-yard strike to put us ahead. I think it was against Angola. And that's the Mariga I remember. Now, when it comes to launching this career, I've been trying to dig and saying, where is Mariga coming from? All I could find was a tweet of 8th this month, 8th September, saying, when you're a leader, okay, the title is From Football to Politics. When you're a leader, you're a leader. It doesn't matter which profession you are in before. All that counts is the leadership skills in a person. George Weah, a former footballer, came from the field to become the senator and now Liberian president. Now, I think it's an overstretch to bring in George Weah. But basically, one of the things that George Weah must have done is to get his basics right. The second thing that Mariga doesn't seem
grassroots, by the way, people actually identify with him. I mean, they may be disillusioned now, but how he even managed to become president is because he was really connected with the people.
Absolutely. And the other thing that Mariga did not manage well in this, and all these things were happening just the last 1 week, is to look like a project entirely at the mercy of other people. He doesn't know what to do. He has to be led. You look at the press conference that is spoken.
Yeah.
And basically, he's not in control of this story. Mariga is being led to the pitch.
And I know. I also not.
We have
we have
the
right.
footage of that. Can we
Actually, we have that soundbite when,
Yeah.
when he was asked his reaction to the invalidation of his candidature. And other than the response, there's also something very interesting that transpired at the tail end of that soundbite.
Right, let's listen.
It's sad. It's sad because I'm a registered voter and they can't find me in the register. So I think, as Mheshimiwa said, we wait for the verdict the coming week.
So when did you register?
Thank you. That's enough. That's enough.
Hey, Mariga.
All right.
He was quickly
I
whisked
remember
away.
I tweeted about this because I was literally watching this live. So let me give a bit of context before.
Yes.
So immediately, you know, Beatrice Muli said what she said. They came out. The first person who addressed the press
That's
was
the IEBC official.
The IEBC, yes.
Yeah.
Nixon Korir, the member of parliament for Langata, came out and he addressed the press and he talked about how this is unfair. And
Actually, he said it doesn't matter when he registered.
Yes, yes, it's neither here nor there was what he said. And talked about the administrative incompetencies of the IEBC. And then former Senator Bonnie Halwale then spoke. And it took a journalist, a female journalist, I don't know who she is, I may have been mistaken when I tweeted about this earlier, but called him out because he was like in the back, he was like 3 rows back, and said, you know, Mariga, how do you feel about this? And then he sort of had to weave through the crowd, came to the front and said, you know, obviously I'm sad, it's a sad day. And then she asked him the question, so when did you register? And as you've seen in the clip, Bonnie Halwale says, that's enough, and they all whisk them away. And something about that just says, and in fact, Mariga then said, this is very sad, but as Mheshimiwa has said, Bonnie Halwale, let's wait for the verdict. You know, who is Mariga, and can we, you know, can the real Mariga please stand up?
But listen, Yvonne, I mean,
who is the candidate?
Who is the candidate?
Because listen,
Fair
Yvonne,
enough.
I mean, you looked at what happened during that press conference that we just watched. I mean, who took Mariga there? If you think
Let's
about
start
it,
with
like the leader of that delegation was Nixon Korir, or was it Bonnie Halwale? Like that is the best that he could get from the ranks of Jubilee.
But who seconded him, Joe?
Because if you're thinking about running on on the ticket of a party, a big party, the party of the
ruling
president,
party,
the party of the president, and all you get. I mean, compare that with Imran. Imran went there. He had the party chairman, John Badi, was there.
Yes.
The director of elections was
Junaid
there.
Mohammed.
There was
Secretary
General Edwin Sifuna. There was Judy Pareno was there.
Yeah.
And then at some point, the party leader appeared. So, look, this is how you approach an election, to say this is an election we are serious about. But if you're going to be escorted there by a former senator, and then you are escorted by a first-time MP from Nairobi. I mean, respect to them, they are in those places. But honestly, that is not how you say, well, I'm here, I've arrived, I'm in this race. And it actually suggests to me that there is something going on in Jubilee about the Mariga candidature that we are actually yet to even understand. Because how can that be? I mean, where was the Secretary General of the party? Where is Tuju? Where are we? Even the MPs from Nairobi, where is the senator, for example, Senator Sakaja? Why were they not there?
Well, it is an illustration of the divisions within the ruling party Jubilee, because we all know right now that the party is divided into two factions. There is Tanga Tanga and there is Kieleweke. There is the president and there is the deputy president. And this is the shape even these nominations had taken. If you remember the first few hours of the announcement of the nomination of Mariga, it was contested. You know, there was a tweet there that was then denied, you know, and there was a lot of confusion as to who the party was going for Kibra constituency. But what is clearly coming out here is Mariga is the Tanga Tanga candidate for Kibra constituency. You've not heard from the party leadership on Thika Road. Raphael Tuju is quiet. This is uncharacteristic. But he should have spoken and said,
But
we saw
even if you were to say that he is a Tanga member,
he gave us
you would have
certificates, and that's all
expected
that
the leading lights of Tanga
well, there was no one else to give the certificate. But after he did that, where did he go? Where
he disappeared. The only thing he said, oh, let's have peaceful elections,
Yeah.
yada, 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 alafu ikaishia hapo, and the guy left to go to
That's
IEBC.
not how
He has
Tuju
not
does
spoken
it. That's not how
since-
No,
Tuju
he has
does
not
his
spoken
business.
Since the nomination was rejected by the IEBC,
No, he
the
hasn't.
party has not really
Yeah.
come to the aid of
Fair enough.
Mariga.
And I look at it this way. First, it's now beyond any doubt that Macdonald Mariga may not necessarily be the Jubilee candidate. He's a candidate of one faction of the Jubilee party. That's basic. Because you would have expected that the top party leadership, even if not the party leader, President Uhuru Kenyatta, or the deputy party leader, Deputy President William Ruto, but at least the chairman, the secretary general, and the rank and file in the party that would showcase him as this is our candidate. But that is lacking. Number two, Jubilee going to Kibra, it's clearly not an easy race. Remember where Kibra is,
Nyumbani kwa
and
baba.
especially at the heart of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga's politics, so to say. That is his, you can say, his stronghold, if you were to use those terms that you use during election periods. This is his stronghold, basically. It would be very, very unusual for him to lose there. So you can imagine Jubilee is already at a disadvantage, and then they disadvantage themselves even further by presenting a candidate in an environment of division. So therein makes it very difficult for Mariga even to make an impression.
But this is what Mariga said, which for me intrigued me, because there was a tweet that smelled, walked, sounded, and looked like Tanga, because he said...
It was not his handwriting, is what you're trying to say.
Well, I mean,
It didn't look like it.
I don't know about that, but I know that this one, if you read it, you would know that this is Tanga speaking. The government has decided to run a full gamut of chaos and criminality against Honorable Ndindi Nyoro and the Muranga people. Nyoro yesterday displayed his commitment to civil obedience. As leaders, we must all deter the bully boy tactics by police against any Kenyan. And then hashtag Ndindi Nyoro. This was on the 9th of September. Now, two things strike me. First of all, he's talking about the government.
Right.
Okay.
That's
The
Mariga's
government that is
speech,
formed by Jubilee, the party on whose ticket is running. So he's going into an election on the ticket of a party that he says is doing all these things,
Bullying
criminal things against people, and he's happy to go and
Is that
take the ticket.
Mariga's language?
I'll come to that. I'll come to that in a moment. I'll come to that in a moment. And then, secondly, he's wading right into this murky politics of Tanga and Keleweke. If you're a candidate and you're coming into this, you'd like the support of all the people that you can find, especially in a difficult race like Kibra, as Francis was saying. This is not a Jubilee stronghold. So you need every single extra vote that you can get from that Keleweke or whatever. So why don't you just look like you don't know all these things, even if you were sponsored by someone? But this one, honestly, it showed me that either someone is not advising him correctly, or maybe someone...
Can I also
It
say,
sounds
though,
to me like the account is managed centrally. You would get a number of similar sounding texts around the issue of Ndindi Nyoro's arrest and all the drama in Muranga. So it sounds to me like, and you've correctly put it, is dived straight into the deep end of the Tanga versus Kieleweke politics, which is currently dominating.
Which is interesting. I would have hoped to see a lot more tweets about Kibra, why I want to run, why I'm passionate about the people there, what I want to do. But I would not have imagined that he would be wading into this so quickly before he gets into Parliament. Can I just go back a little bit to the legal issues and why a lot of people see the similarities between this and Kathy Kilonzo's case? So first of all, I mean, the whole issue is about the voter register and whether his name will appear, and we will wait to see what the IEBC Internal Dispute Resolution Committee comes up with. But the most important thing to remember is this, is that the voter register is key. It is everything. And what legal minds are telling me, and those who are very well versed with the electoral law, that the voter register must be certain, it must be static, and it must be predictable. And it is final and conclusive, which is why when you apply, you know, they take time to do the verification, and then they gazette your name as a voter, you know, in the register. And that the register must be absolute. And so this is not where we can say, and that is, I think, what it'll all come down to, especially once they start to sit down and take a look at that. And also in line with that, remember the Kathy Kilonzo case? What did the judge say
Actually,
in that case?
we have that slide. We have a graphic slide.
Yes.
Of,
It's actually on air, yeah.
That ruling was by 3 judges, Richard Mwongo, Mombi Ngugi, and Weldon Korir. That time, the judges were unanimous that an acknowledgement slip is not a confirmation of registration as a voter. They must first refer to the principal register. In this case, if you remember the regulations in the run-up to the 2017 general election, was that voter identification will be electronic.
The KIMS kit.
And that electronic identification is from the register that will have been fed into the KIMS kits. So you cannot come with a physical
because there is no voter's card anyway.
That is not tallying with the voter registration document, i.e. the KIMS kit. So therein is a problem. And even as the Dispute Resolution Tribunal deals with this matter, it is chaired by Chairman IEBC Wafula Chebukati. That decision by the 3 judges will bear.
It will. And perhaps, you know, with Kathy, they talked about fraud. But in the case of Mariga, I'm not, well, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't see fraud. The only problem is his application is still ongoing. It has not been completed.
Linus and Joe, I have to say this. You have to give me a chance to say this, sorry.
Yes, Jamila.
Please go ahead.
Go ahead, Jamila.
I think we need to look at Mariga in terms of how his nomination into Jubilee was done, considering that we had this process where it was not what walimpigia kura, it was like an interview for a job. In fact, the fellow candidates who would have wanted to run in the same seat had complained about how it was done.
That Mariga was rigged
in. Because we even saw, I think, pictures of the marks that he was given by the
500 out of 600.
Exactly. Akapatiwa hicho kiti na akapatiwa tiketi akasemekana kwamba he would run on the ticket. But also, talking about Kibra and why it's important to Raila Odinga, look at how the nominations were done. ODM ilifanyika ikamalizika. In fact, people keep comparing Muranga the other day, where we saw a mini riot when the member of parliament Didi Nyoro was arrested, and compare it to now in Kibra, where ODM had
the nomination in Kibra was more peaceful
than
a church service in Muranga. That's what people have been saying.
And then we had people who
Kibra losing their culture.
And then there are people, of course, there are those who felt like, oh, Imran alipatia hicho kiti and all that. But when Imran was being given the nomination certificate, all the other candidates were there. Now walikuwa hapo wamesema tumekubali matokeo ya chama. So this is, I think, optics in terms of Raila trying to show that ODM as a party has matured, and the people's voices are being heard, and the fact that democracy yetu imefika to a point where the person that people want is the one who ends up getting the ticket, as compared to Zamani, where there were other factors that were in play when someone is about to be given a ticket, especially in a place like Kibra, where it's almost a given, of course it's still the people's right to vote, that the ODM candidate, chances are he would carry the day.
But
so
we must not forget something very fundamental. ODM party proved very many people wrong. In fact, many people were looking forward to a very hostile nomination the other Saturday in Kibra. But it was totally different. There you have to give ODM props, because they conducted nominations. They may have had a few issues here and there, delays, some names missing and so on and so forth. But by and large, the kind of a picture that you saw from Kibra was very positive. And I hope political parties will build on that nominations can be conducted and eventually the people's choice is taken, regardless of talk of a preferred candidate or not. But give them props. In fact, look at what happened in other areas, in other nominations that were conducted, and it was totally chaotic. Compared to this, it was credit to ODM, absolutely.
But credit more to the voters in Kibera, because if you look at the atmosphere preceding these nominations, there was a time they met the party leadership and made it clear that, hey, don't interfere. Don't interfere with the selection process, with the nomination process. Let the people decide. And that is what it came down to, because there was some perception that certain candidates had the green light of the party. I think there were some candidates that were mentioned in a way that projected them as having an advantage.
Like Peter already.
Mwalimu Peter was projected that way. And here was the result that was coming from the people themselves. I think on this one, the ODM voters caught the party unawares.
But many people say, back to Mariga, that even if he gets the issue of his registration as a voter sorted out, but there are apparently questions about his
birth
age?
date, yes.
Where's that coming from? What's that about?
I went online and I went to Wikipedia, and according to it, it says he was born on 4th of April, 1987. And by 2002, they were winning school championship games at Kakamega High School, at the time with Dennis Oliech, who played for Ozer at some point, and he would be 15 years old at the time, according to if the calculations are done. And he went on and played for several clubs, all the way to Parma and Inter Milan. In fact, at some point, he was supposed to play for Portsmouth in the English Premier League, and because of some issues about a work permit, he was unable to do so. Now, that is what is now out there in that world of football. But there are those who are saying that, no, Mariga was born in 1981.
Others 83.
Others 83. So there are these three different dates of birth that are being given for Macdonald Mariga. And it worries me because earlier I had said that he has had this illustrious career. He's a son of the soil who represented us in all those international platforms. He played in Parma, he played in Inter Milan. He was a captain of Harambee Stars at some point.
87 would mean he's younger than Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yes, Cristiano Ronaldo is 33 years old now.
And he's not retired.
And he's not retired.
Mariga is retired.
Yes, so there are all these questions that are coming up about his age.
But it's 2002, 2003, he played for the under 17. I think he was a captain or something like that.
And
how old is he?
Is that the team that was disqualified over age cheating?
Yeah.
Yes. Wow.
Okay. Yeah. And by the way, there's also
the issue of the serial number of the ID.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question that is being posed about the serial number of the identity card that he presented to IEBC for the process of verification. Listening to some officials from the National Registration Bureau, they say that 29
number ID.
Is it 28, 29?
It's 29.
Is code for is serial number for 1994 bonds. So there are some questions that probably he will need to answer even before he seeks the mandate of the Kibra election.
And to be clear, right now, we don't know whether it is or not. But I'm just saying that those questions will actually trouble them in this role.
So gangsters, as we take a break, with all of these issues, I mean, if it gets to that point, and hopefully Jubilee would be allowed, should his candidature not pan out, you know, much like, you know, with the Kathy Kilonzo case, they were allowed, Wiper was allowed to field Mutula Kilonzo Jr. Is there a plan B? Do you see a plan B?
Maybe the number two during that process.
Who would be, there was a guy who came...
But all the other candidates have been lining up saying, like, I mean, this guy, if he's not qualified, just get him off so that we can actually get...
But also, listening to some party officials, there was reluctance in fielding a candidate in Kibra.
In the first place.
There was reluctance.
Handshake Manenos?
Yeah, handshake Manenos, of course. There was some reluctance. So even to some, Mariga was a forced candidate. And because of, they didn't want to look like they're antagonizing the deputy president, who is said to be the person fronting Mariga, there was an agreement, okay, let's field a candidate. And probably not necessarily field a candidate to win, but for other purposes like, one, taking the battle to Raila Odinga's doorstep, number one. Number two, also gauge yourself. What can you do in such a constituency? Right. In fact, if you listen to, I have listened to some members of parliament who are allied to the Tanga wing, and one of the accusations against the Secretary General has been that he has been refusing to field candidates in by-elections. Even when probably the party says, let's get realistic, maybe we may not be able to win this seat. But be it as it may, Mariga goes into this race, if he will be allowed to be a candidate, on a very, very negative note. And I've even had some members of parliament who are allied to Kieleweke say they will campaign for the ODM candidate.
Wow,
Maina Kamanda is on record saying that they are going to campaign for the ODM candidate. Therein lies the problem. You are moving into a race wearing the jersey of Jubilee Party, but at a disadvantage because even those who are supposed to be cheering you on are jeering you.
I mean, would we be having this untidy ID registration, all of these things, if Jubilee as a whole was truly behind this? I have my
but
doubt.
if Mariga himself got his personal things in order, from his birth date to his ID to voter registration, then basically hand yourself in as a candidate.
And let the people decide.
And let the people decide. And which is why Nicholas Simani is writing and saying that Mariga didn't score an own goal, then ruled offside. He basically was an ineligible player who entered the pitch when not properly registered to play in the team.
And actually,
that is what happened.
Actually, Linus, it would be normal politics if all these issues about Mariga were coming from the competitors, ODM.
Not from
but
they're coming
from
within.
Jubilee. They're coming from within. Then it means kuna wase hawamtaki kwa hiyo acheze timu yao.
And it's not about him.
No.
I think it's Tanga versus Kieleweke.
Yeah.
And him coming in as a Tanga candidate. That elicits some
And this project
reactions.
projects have never been successful, not in this country.
All right, we need to take a break, guys, so that we can come after the break. We'll be discussing Wiper, someone hacking the accounts, and of course we'll go to Muranga, that church.
Action. Sorry, I couldn't help that.
Dede Nyoro.
Is it about that fruit?